Welcome to the first day of summer 2021 session. I'm actually excited to get this started and to have a very successful summer. We are all coming off of a very tragic, hard year and a half, and it's exciting to me to see the progress that's being made as we move forward. So I want to begin by talking a little bit about this course, what we're going to do this course, and how it's going to be organized so that you'll have an idea of what to expect. 10 weeks goes by quickly, so you've got to hit the trail running and being ready to get everything up and going. Otherwise, it will get away from you. So let's go ahead and get started. And again, I'm going to begin and explain how the course is organized, and then I will do an introductory presentation in terms of some statistics and get you started for your first homework assignment. And as you saw in the first one, I titled it Statistics or Sadistic, because I know, and it breaks my heart, but I know that social workers typically do not like statistics. I don't know how many times I've heard social work students say, but I took social work, I don't like math, or I'm not good in math. Statistics is really not about math. It is based on mathematical equations, and it is based on numbers when we're talking quantitative, but it's not about math. It's going to be a tool that we use to tell the story that we've learned from our research or from the data that we have collected about our clients. So it's really not about math. We have advanced so far in the last 20, 30 years that our computer programs do the math components for us. We have to have some basic understanding of mathematical computation, but overall, statistics is simply one more tool that we use to tell our stories to impact the outcomes for our clients. There are two different types of statistics that we're going to be using. These are the overarching paradigms. There's descriptive statistics and there's inferential statistics. Descriptive statistics is what we're going to start out with. No matter what data you collect in behavioral sciences, you're going to always compute descriptive statistics for your sample population. This gives you a picture of what your sample population looks like. How many males, how many females, how tall are they, what's their average weight, what's the median weight. So we're going to look at measures of central tendency, mean, median, and mode. We're going to look at variance and variability in terms of range, in terms of standard deviations, and we're going to look at some relationship things, simply meant to describe our sample population. You always begin your data analysis with descriptive analysis, using descriptive methods. If your data is collected at the right kinds of levels and the research protocol is set up in a way such as you can actually then move into inferential statistics. Inferential statistics is the group of statistics where you can then make some assumptions about relationships in your data. This is where we get involved with t-test, with ANOVA, with chi-square. We move into multiple regression. We have factorial analysis. So these are a little bit more, if you would, sophisticated type of statistical analysis, but we can actually then make more making inferences about relationships in our data if we have things set up correctly. So basically, this is what we're going to be exploring this 10 weeks is descriptive statistics and some very basic introduction to some inferential statistics, the ones that we use most often as social work practitioners. Again, statistics is simply a set of tools and techniques that we use to describe, organize, interpret information or data about the client populations we are working with. Okay, or we plan to work with, or we want to find out about. So that's what we use statistics for. It is not about math. Now we use statistics also too in terms of if we're looking at budgetary items, if we're doing some form of analysis in terms of cost efficiency. But again, we're simply using the tools, the numbers, to tell a story. And as I explained briefly, inferential statistics, that would be the next step after you've actually summarized your data. If you do have data that lends itself to this based on how it was collected, as well as based on the levels of collection you've done it at, when we talk about variable levels, nominal, ordinal, interval ratio. So inferential statistics are used to make those inferences from a smaller group of data to possibly a larger one, but at least about the relationships within that sample of data. Okay, so what we cannot do is we cannot collect data and then explain it using verbiage that makes it sound like it applies to everybody with those characteristics. We can't do that. That goes back into the research methodology in terms of not being generalizable, because we don't have a random sample and we don't have random assignments, and our sample doesn't reflect the characteristics of the larger population. So being able to make those inferences from the data we collect to larger populations is really grounded in how the research methodology is set up, like what we went through last semester. But we can make some inferences about the internal relationships within our data also. So the smaller group of data is called a sample, which is a portion or a subset of a population. Maybe you're interested in, I know one of the topics off the top of my head from last semester has to do with the relationship of women and money, or how women maybe are not able to climb in the corporate world to levels to be able to earn substantial money like men. So you can't sample every woman out there in the United States. So you choose a population, you choose a sample of that population. And if you choose it correctly using some randomized methods and seeing that you can actually pull a small sample of 500 that represent 50,000 women, then you can actually make those inferences to that larger population. We rarely, if ever, do that in social work. Most of the time, we're simply looking at relationships internally with our clients, and oftentimes about which intervention works better, attitudes, satisfaction, things like that. So statistics is just a tool that helps us understand the world around us. So we have to learn to use numbers to tell our stories. That's the best way I can describe the importance of statistics, because oftentimes when we're telling our stories to people who hold the strings of money. They're the ones who actually can release the resources that we need to help our clients. The heartstrings are good. The heartstrings are important. What's important about the client's best outcome. But if you're managing financial dollars, if you're managing limited resources, then you're going to want to see some numbers. So tell me, how many clients can this money benefit, and how much will it benefit them? So we have to learn to use these statistics to be able to tell our story to a wide variety of audiences, so that we in turn can get the outcomes we want for our clients, because we need access to resources for our clients. We need evidence as to what works for our clients. Statistics is just the tool we use to do that. So here are just a few of the terms that I want you to go back and look up. Statistics, we've just kind of gone over that. We've talked a little bit about descriptive statistics. We've talked a little bit about inferential statistics, what a sample is, what a population is, about our variables, what is a variable, and the levels of variables, whether it be nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio. These are things you're going to have to know and understand to make decisions about how to compute statistics from the data that you have, or how to interpret statistics that have been computed and reported in a journal article, say, or have been reported in some type of executive summary. Maybe your organization hired an outside program evaluation company to come in, evaluate your program, and then they've presented this executive summary based on this data. Instead of being at the effect of what somebody else has done, you need to be able to be informed and have basic knowledge and skills to know how they arrived at those determinations, how that data was interpreted and whether it was done correctly or not, because we can't be at the will of somebody else. There has to be some checks and balances in there. So you have to know it to do it, but you also have to know it to be a consumer of it also. So I want you to go back and I want you to look up these terms and look for those definitions of these terms. Again, you can Google them, you can go to your book, any research. The terms are the terms are the terms. You're going to find people who use a little bit different terminology when defining them, but the concepts are the same. So if I haven't convinced you yet why social workers need statistics, of course, Council on Social Work Education certainly has a strong emphasis on evidence-based practice, and the requirements, the ethical requirements from NASW also, that we actually engage in evidence-based practice and we promote it. Statistics is a tool that we use for that. As you saw in the policy I sent out to you from the graduate school, because I'm not sure everybody's aware of that, to earn a graduate degree at Texas A&M Commerce and virtually any other university, you have to produce some form of a research product. That's just a requirement of a graduate degree. So within our program, we have created this so that it can be fairly practice oriented, so you can get some hands-on experience without actually having to engage in a full thesis, which could certainly extend your graduation date, but then to develop the competency and the skills that you're going to need from this research aspect. As practitioners, we pretty much always use our research skills in our program and practice evaluations. They are one and the same. Unless you're going to go on to a PhD and go into academic research, what you're learning here is going to make you a better practitioner because you're going to have those skills for program and practice evaluation. So we have to be able to interpret evidence and create evidence to directly impact our client outcomes through the research skills that we're learning here. And that's why there's a requirement from CSWE. That's why it's built into the NASW Code of Ethics. That's why the graduate school has a requirement, because this is the very scientific foundation that practice is based on. So that's why we have to learn statistics. So briefly, I'm going to explain how the course is organized. It's organized across 10 weeks. This obviously is the first week, and each week will include pre-recorded lectures or practice examples. So it'll either be a lecture on the particular topic, or it will be going through a practice example in Excel showing you how to run it, okay? Each week there are going to be handouts and instructions for a practice assignment that I really encourage you to do before you do the graded homework assignment. If we were in a face-to-face classroom, each week we would do this practice assignment together. So I would be at the board with the Excel spreadsheet up on the overhead, and we would be walking through it because you have to practice it to learn it. So I encourage you to take advantage of those practice exercises each week before you do your homework assignment, even though they're not graded. But then when you do your homework assignment, you've already practiced on how to do it. And you're going to walk through the same steps for that homework assignment. So I'm going to talk to you about creating an Excel workbook, and then you can keep your practice assignments in there and your homework assignments in there. You can put notes on there. I will grade your homework assignment in your Excel workbook, and I will send it back to you. Why it's important to have one workbook is because, again, it builds each week. It'll be a reference for you, and you can have, when you do your midterm and you do your final exam, you will have all of these assignments, these practice assignments, the feedback, the notes that you take at your fingertips. Okay, so you'll be able to have access to your Excel workbook that you're creating each week when you do your midterm and your final. So I really encourage you to follow instructions on how to set up this Excel workbook. I've been doing this now for about 5 years in this class, and I've worked out some of the kinks in it. So I really encourage you to follow that. That gives you the opportunity again to practice it before you do it to help you understand it, because that's the best way to learn it, is just to practice it. You have to get in there and do it to actually, for it to make sense. So each week you'll have a practice assignment or a practice opportunity, and then you'll have a homework assignment. And then you'll have an opportunity in the discussion section. It is not required, but I hope you take advantage of it, at least for yourself, if nobody else, to go back and post 1 or 2 things you learned. I learned how to format in Excel this week. I learned how to add the data analysis tool pack this week. Because what you can see as you go through the semester, you're going to see your progress. If you just take that time to just give yourself credit for a couple things that you've learned this week in each discussion, you're going to be able to see some progress throughout the semester. All right, so the focus of the course, of course, is going to be on some very basic statistical analysis and learning how to do those in Excel. Why are we using Excel? I know you've probably been exposed to SPSS if you were in our undergraduate program, or SPSS somewhere else. SPSS is a statistical software that is used at the university for social behavioral sciences analysis, and it is used for in a lot of settings. There's some other packages out there now too, but if we were to use SPSS, you would either have to purchase a license, a graduate school license, or a graduate student license, which is about $200 for, I think, a year, to be able to have SPSS to do it on, or you would have to drive to one of our campuses and use the software program on one of the computers that's there. When I went through the program 150 years ago and we did statistics, I had to drive to campuses and sit in the computer lab for hours to do my homework using SPSS because I didn't have an opportunity to have it at home. So several years ago, I opted to start using Excel. And Excel, you can do everything in Excel that you can do in SPSS. It just requires a few extra steps sometimes, but Excel is advancing rapidly in terms of being a statistical software. And pretty much everybody has access to Excel, and agencies have access to Excel. Most agencies can't afford $5,000 a year to pay for an SPSS license for them to run some very basic statistical data. So you're going to learn some practical skills in Excel that you can use in your everyday practice, in your home practice, in setting up your own budgets or whatever. So that's why I use Excel and not SPSS, because it is cheaper. It is more convenient for you and for me, and it will be accessible to you after you get out of a program, because once you're away from an academic institution, then you don't have access to SPSS unless your organization purchases one of the $5,000 or $6,000 a year license. So again, just reiterating, most agencies don't have the funds for a statistical software. So if you can gain skills in Excel, you will be far ahead of others in your organizations. What I do know from doing this for years is I have students come back to me and they have demonstrated their skills and what they're learning in their field practicums, and they have been tapped to do a whole lot of special projects, because most people do not have other than just very, very, very basic Excel skills. So you're going to be learning a little bit more than just the very basic, okay? Any statistic computed in SPSS or other software can be computed in Excel. Most of them have a click and point or a point and click. If it gets a little more complicated, you actually have to do a little bit of other structures, which we'll see in chi-square. But for every practical purpose, Excel works. So this is a very practical skills class in learning Excel spreadsheets. Now, in the background of our weekly homework assignments, you're going to be working for that research project proposal. Now, last semester, you should have developed a fairly stable proposal that you could then send out this semester to gather data with. Some of you have some work to do on that, and I hope you worked on that over this break, because it would have been a little less hectic to get some of those changes made that need to be done. However, the changes and the corrections that I sent to you must be done, and I must approve it before you can begin collecting data. Because this is a 10-week semester and it is so quick, you need to get me those changes by the end of this week. So by Sunday night, you need to submit to me your proposal, again, with changes, corrections, a corrected questionnaire, whatever it is, so that I can hop on that and get that back to you. Ideally, you would want to be able to send it out, post it through Facebook, whatever you've proposed to do, you want to be able to get that done by mid-June so that by in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you'll have enough data collected that you can do an analysis and get that written up before the end of the semester. I've pushed it back so you do not have to submit your final proposal paper manuscript until the very last day of the semester. That means I'll be grading all that weekend because I'll have to get grades in on that next Monday. But I've given you that amount of time. If you can get it done sooner, that'd be great for me and you both. But I've given you that amount of time to do that because it goes so quickly. But you cannot sit on it. If you need to get with me, then we need to schedule something very quickly this week to sit down and talk about the changes you need to make moving forward. Once you've collected your data, you're going to use the knowledge and skills and examples from each week's assignments to analyze your own data and write your own results, and then write your own discussion session and essentially finish out your research proposal and make it a full manuscript, closing the loop from the literature review at the beginning to the discussion section at the end. So this is going to be going on in the background, okay? So you're not going to have, I want this by this, I want this by this. You've got to have the initiative and the focus and the discipline to continue to work on this throughout the background. Now, I'm certainly available and we'll meet with you. We'll go over things with you. We'll help you as many times as I need to throughout the semester. But again, this is a continuation from last semester. You're learning statistics and you're going to apply what you learned to the data you're collected. So you've got to complete that process. Okay, and I just can't emphasize enough, we only have 10 weeks. Summer goes by so quickly, and we have to complete the same amount of content that we would if we were in a long 16 weeks semester, or spring or fall. And thank you that it's not one of those 5-week summer semesters, because there are some of those too. Oh my, that would be a nightmare. But there is ample time to get everything completed required for this course and to be successful if you'll take some suggestions from me. First, you got to develop some focus. Okay, and you can create time actually by scheduling times a block to work on something and then focusing strictly on that. You got to trust me on this. I know it works, and anytime I can keep to this for myself, I actually create time. So an example would be for me is every Monday I have a 4-hour block where I either work on class content or I work on writing one of my manuscripts I'm writing up. So I have 4 hours. I block that off. Just like if I was going to be in a meeting at the university, I would never miss my meeting, right? It's scheduled. I've got to be there. So I make a meeting with myself. It's scheduled and I'm going to be there, and I don't schedule anything else in it, and I honor that. So create that time for focus when you can actually close out the world and focus strictly on an assignment, whether it be from my class or one of your other classes. It works. So you can do that. Create that time for focus and then honor it. Our biggest thing is our brain takes over and it talks us out of honoring that. Oh, but this is more important. I need to go do that. And then we're chasing our tail trying to get caught up. Tied to the focus is what I just explained, and that's giving an allotted amount of time for this course and all of your other courses. And don't waver, because you know what? You took an online course because it's more convenient. If you were taking a face-to-face course, you would have time that you had to drive to the university. So depending on where you live, like I live an hour from the university, I would have a 3-hour class and I would have an hour drive home. That right there is 5 hours a week I would be investing in going to a class. There's no reason why I can't extrapolate 3 hours a week minimum to set aside and work on a class. What happens when we get into that online environment is we don't focus like that. We don't think about like that. We don't think about replacing our time. So you know what? I don't have to shower, get dressed, drive, but I can still set aside that 3 hours that I would be physically in that class because I was committed to going to a class, but now I'm online. So use that same concept, okay? And block off that time and don't waver from it. Again, just like you schedule time that you have to be at a meeting at work or a team staffing or a client staffing, or you see clients, do the same thing with your schoolwork. Don't let your brain talk you out of it. Don't let your brain say, oh, well, there's more important things to do. You can do this later. Because that's when you're going to get frustrated and get behind and not do your best work. So at the beginning of the week, Sunday night, Monday morning, block off that time when you know you can and you're using your brain to think it through. It's not a reactionary thing. And then use it, and you can do it. Those of you who've gone through an undergraduate program have been face-to-face. We used to have the graduate program face-to-face, and some still prefer that, and we'll be going back to that in the fall. But don't assume that you don't need to take that time anymore to do that. You had that time before, use it, okay? So create your time. You actually can create time doing that. The biggest key is honoring your time. And I know for me, that's the biggest key. Oh my gosh, I'm the world's worst for saying, oh, well, I'll do this right now and come back to that. No, I've learned to tell myself, I'd send my brain into timeout and go, no, you are not the boss of me. I've scheduled this ahead of time and I'm going to do it. So that's important to do. So that's one way you can get through this semester if you think about it like that. And also recognize that you're going to have to sacrifice something. If you're working, if you're doing a field practicum, if you're in classes, you may not have a social life for 10 weeks, period. You may not be cooking supper for your family for 10 weeks, period. They just have to understand that. You just kind of negotiate that. I've done that at my house throughout the years when I was going to school, because I've always been married and always worked when I went to school and had a family. And I'd say, you know what? For this period of time, this is my focus. Y'all are going to have to go to the Dairy Queen to get some hamburgers or something. And you'll be surprised at the support you get from your family if you can set those boundaries up. It is not forever. It is for 10 weeks. But I know that this last year and a half has been really hard, but you're still in an online course. So I want you to be successful. So I want you to think about these techniques that I know personally and from research will work. And the other thing is to practice. And practice is so important in what we do. And you practice your interviewing skills. You practice your assessment skills, you practice writing up your notes, you practice all of those until they become fluent. But oftentimes we don't think we have to practice with our schoolwork also too, but we're just learning. So don't set yourself up just to go, okay, it's Saturday night, I've got to get this homework one done, I'm going to sit down and do it and go through it. You may be able to do it, but you're going to be cheating yourself, honestly. So take some time, do the practice exercises, then do your homework. There's one or two homeworks in here that I can tell you each semester we all go back and redo because we learn from it. So you may have an opportunity or a requirement to redo one of the homeworks because it's practicing. It's about learning. If you've not used Excel for statistical analysis before, I don't expect you to know it the first time. I expect you to watch examples. I expect you to mimic those examples. I expect you to practice and try and work on it. But if we have to go back and redo it, we will do that too because it's about practicing and learning. So focus, time, and practice are important for being successful in this class for these 10 weeks. Focus, time, and practice. I can't say enough about those three things. And they all go together. When you focus and you block out that time, then you can practice, and then you're going to you will actually be creating time instead of trying to run behind yourself and catch up all the time. So I want you to think about that as we're moving forward and as you're entering this 10 weeks, because it will be fast. I will be available for you. I will do my best to get your homework back to you the day after it is turned in so you can get that feedback. And since I am no longer department head effective May 1st, I have stepped down. My focus is on my courses and on my research. So I will have more time blocked off to get things back to you quickly. So I'm looking forward to a great semester. And let's just jump right into it and get started for week 1 when we're going to practice setting up our Excel workbook. I'm going to have you download a data analysis tool pack and have you run some very basic data for your first homework assignment. So we're going to kick it off. And don't forget to be looking at that proposal, getting those corrections to me so that we can be moving forward on that also. Have an amazing first week of summer school.